She needs a date to her best friend's gala. He wants to settle down. Can they get past their hang-ups to see that they should be together? This is the premise of The Accidental Swipe by me, Y.M. Nelson. This steamy contemporary romance features Jason and Fortune, two people who've given up on love and are urged to use an online dating app to find someone. When they find each other, the attraction is undeniable, but their jaded outlooks on love based on past emotional hurt may keep them from getting together. The Accidental Swipe releases on July 25th, 2023. Go to ymnelson.com for all of the latest details. This is the Nerdy Romantics Podcast, and I'm your host, Y.M. Nelson. Hello, Nerdy Romantics. Today we are going to get nerdy, and we're talking about Star Trek Picard Season 2. If you have been with me and you've listened to, there's a two-part episode where I talk about Star Trek Picard Season 1. And I was really giddy about it because it was actually at 25 years where they showed Star Trek Picard. And the thing that made me so giddy about that is I had just watched the end of the Star Trek TNG series. And I was kind of reflecting on that because they go 25 years into the future. And so it was a really weird coincidental moment, and I had to talk about it, and I had to talk about a couple of the episodes, Season 1. I was so giddy about it, and now that I have a Trekkie romance out there that actually refers to Star Trek Picard in a few little areas, I really thought that I'd bring in my guest host this time and see if they wanted to talk about Star Trek Picard Season 2, since Season 2 has wrapped. Season 3 will be out in February of 2023. They've already finished with recording on Season 3. Season 3 will be the final season of Star Trek Picard. It is on Paramount Plus. And before we get too deep into everything, I just want to let everyone know that there will be spoilers. There will be spoilers of Season 1. There will be spoilers of Season 2, obviously, as we talk about it, because we're going to get really deep into the story. And there will probably be some spoilers of what we know about Season 3. Because, as y'all know, I'm a big fan of Star Trek. And after I finished with Season 2, I watched all of the little extras that they had on Paramount Plus. I watched Will Wheaton's Ready Room series where he gives commentary and does interviews. And I even watched some clips from when the cast of Season 3 was at New York Comic-Con. So there may be some spoilers of all 3 seasons here of Picard. Also, we are probably going to talk about other series here because, as we have found out in this, there are a lot of Easter eggs that point to other different series, mostly ones that have happened after TNG. So, if you have not seen Star Trek Picard Season 2, or Season 1, by the way, and you don't want to be spoiled, please turn this podcast off, go and watch it, and come back and join us. Okay, so what I really want to talk about before we get into the show and the season, I want to talk about being a fan of Star Trek. I've got with me today Jen and Staci, and I want to ask both of y'all, what made you a fan of Star Trek? What series was it that you started watching? Why did you start watching? What was it that grabbed you? And how far into it are you? Just a little background for myself. As you may know, I am a Star Trek TNG fan. When we say TNG, we mean Star Trek The Next Generation. When we say DS9, we're talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. If we're saying TOS, we're talking Star Trek, the original series. That's the Kirk and Spock Star Trek. I'm trying to think of any other acronyms, but if any come up, just let me know. But I am a Star Trek, the Next Generation fan. That's how I entered the series, or that's how I entered the franchise, I should say. Fell in love with that show, and to this day, there are some starting credits that happen before the theme song happens. You know, shows used to have a theme song back in the day. Their starting story, usually by the end of the starting story, before the theme song happens, I can tell you what happens on the episode, what the episode's about, how it's going to end. And I've got probably the first 7 episodes they come to me from memory, like, you know, what they are. And from there, I stayed with the franchise. I'm a DS9 fan. I'm a Voyager fan. Not so much an Enterprise fan. And I think that's because Scott Bakula is like, it channels Quantum Leap for me. And so, you know, it's not channeling Star Trek for me. And that theme song that they have is just straight annoying. I absolutely love Picard, and I didn't think that I would love Star Trek Discovery, but I do. It is amazing. I've just started Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which is actually going all the way back even before Star Trek, the original series. I recognize the original series as canon, but I cannot tell you exactly like what episodes or what. I know a few major episodes, but I really got into Star Trek, the original series, with their movies. Love the Star Trek, the original series, all the movies that they're in, that cast is in. So, Staci, talk to us. Tell us why you became a Star Trek fan or how that happened.
With Star Trek Next Generation. I was never really into the first one until I started watching the Next Generation. And then I watched the movies that came out with the original cast, but I never really got into the TV show. And I'm not really sure why I started. I mean, I guess because I like science fiction, fantasy, that kind of stuff. And so when the show came on, you know, watched a couple of episodes and got hooked. And I mean, I really got hooked on it for a while there. I used to get the little magazine, Star Trek: The Next Generation magazine from the bookstore.
Oh my gosh, so, there was a magazine?
There was
a
magazine.
Not know this?
And I used to get the magazine. It was, you know, so I mean, I really enjoyed that show. And that opened it up to when the next ones came out. So I dig into Deep Space Nine and Voyager. And I remember, and I don't even remember telling my brother this, but I remember when I saw Voyager, it's like, oh, it's a woman captain. I was like, we finally got a woman captain. And why did they have to make her get lost? Why is she
right?
And I remember, and I don't remember saying that, but like a couple of years ago, my brother was like, you know, I finally watched Voyager and realized what you was talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Because I must have been really upset at the time. And he was like, I don't know why you're talking to me about this. But, and again, same as you, I didn't really get into Enterprise that much. I was like, tried to, but I never got into it. The Discovery, I am enjoying that. I am. And I'm doing and I've watched you said New Horizons, that prequel. Yeah. I say prequel because it's not really a prequel, but it is the captain that was before James
Kirk. Yeah, Captain Archer. I think he was either right before Kirk or one before Kirk, something like that. I think he was right
basically
before
his
Kirk.
Mentor. If you canon, I think is his mentor kind of a thing.
It is, yes.
I have gotten to that. That was been pretty good too. which I was surprised at because I was like, if I didn't like Enterprise, I wasn't gonna like this one. But no, I actually liked that one over Enterprise. And until you said the quantum leap thing, I was like, maybe
Right.
that's why I didn't care much for it. I just didn't see him as a
Exactly.
captain.
Right.
And
Exactly. It's so weird. I don't know why, but I kept thinking Quantum Leap. I mean, he was cool in Quantum Leap.
yeah,
I like
right,
that
I love the
show.
show.
But
But I
I
just couldn't get him there, get him
yeah,
on that.
me
It's
And
great to
neither.
know Quantum Leap is coming back.
yes, I know I've
Yes.
seen it. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try to see it.
Right. I
Sorry,
heard
that's a
you
whole other episode. Sorry.
Well,
But
let us know if you want to see that episode, if you want to hear that episode when we talk about Quantum Leap, because yes, I saw it was coming back and I'm like, oh, giddy.
now about the original Star Trek, I mean, I've admired it, but I never got into the episodes because I liked, dude, who doesn't like Spock? I mean,
Of
I mean,
course.
even though I never really watched all those episodes, I still love Spock. And so, I mean, which is weird, but I will watch that. And I watched Fringe, but not in part because of Spock, but when he came on Fringe, I was like, oh my gosh, Leonard
Yes.
Nimoy.
Yes. Exactly. Oh my
um,
gosh. It was so awesome.
but overall, I mean, I've been, since the beginning of Star Trek: The Next Generation, I've been a fan since then. And when Picard said it was coming, because Picard was my favorite. When you compared Kirk to Picard, I was like, Picard is just so great, and Captain Kirk can give you space herpes. It's just really,
Right.
it was just,
Exactly.
I never cared much for Captain Kirk overall. So when they said Picard was coming, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, Picard. And so there we have it. So now that's how I got into Star Trek: The Next Generation and ended up watching Picard
Oh
and
my
was really grateful that came back.
that's amazing. Amazing. Jen, what about you? How did you get into this Star Trek fandom world? How did you become a Trekkie?
The first thing I probably enjoyed in terms of Star Trek was the movies. I'm such a movie girl. I love going to the movies. Always have, always will. I didn't watch a whole lot of the original series. My brother really liked it, so it was on in our household, but I didn't really watch it. I didn't get into it until The Next Generation came out. And when that started, I was like, okay, I think I'm kind of into this. And it was Picard, honestly. It was Picard and his leadership style that I felt a lot more comfortable with, and I liked Data. Data was one of my favorite characters.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, Data is my favorite.
I
Actually,
know, right?
my three of out of my three favorite episodes, two of them have Data in it, and it's focusing on a story with him.
I love the episodes with Data, and I love what I really liked about it. I think also at the time is that I really wanted to be a therapist, and they had her name is escaping me, the therapist on board with the brown hair. Oh my god, help me, guys! What is her name?
As soon as you said that, I was like, oh,
Her name just left your head too, right?
yes.
Okay, my point is that what I really appreciated was that in that series that they were going a lot more into sort of the psychology of exploring these new worlds and meeting these new and sort of having an impact on the universe and what that does to you as like a small human. I really appreciated that exploration. I appreciated that Data was exploring what does it mean to have emotions? What does it mean to behave like a human? And I really appreciated that type of exploration that they were doing on top of the fun, let's go to different worlds and different planets and be ambassadors and that type of thing. So I thought that's what really drew me into TNG. And like I said, I really liked the movies. My favorite movie though was the one with the whale and I don't know, and Scotty. I just loved Scotty. But after that, I kind of fell off the wagon a little bit because I just had other things going on in my life, and I wasn't able to keep up as much with Deanna Troy. Thank you, Staci. Thank you, Deanna Troy is her name. Anyway, but I wasn't able to kind of keep up as much. I watched a lot of Deep Space Nine, but I wasn't able to watch it consistently. And then same thing with Voyager. I loved that Captain Janeway was the captain there, but I didn't get to see as many episodes as I wish I had. Now that I have a little bit more, the way that you can watch the shows by binging them is speaking to me. And so I have loved watching Picard. I've loved Discovery. I think they're doing some really cool things with Discovery. But I don't know if you guys have seen Below Decks. Below Decks
I
makes me
haven't
laugh.
yet.
That's the
Oh
Yes,
gosh,
but
cartoon, right?
I've heard it's hilarious.
I thoroughly enjoy watching Below Decks. It is so much of a comedy. It's so much fun. And my husband was a naval officer. He was on submarines. He loves to say that it is essentially a documentary about what really happens on ship.
Oh wow.
Which is just hilarious to me. So anyway, yeah, so we have really enjoyed.
Stacy, what were you saying about Below Decks?
Was that the cartoon?
Yes.
Yes, but you know, there are actually two cartoons right now on Paramount Plus.
Hmm.
There's one called Star Trek Prodigy, and I think that is an animated series. But the Star Trek Below Decks, that's the funny one. I don't think Prodigy is funny.
So Prodigy is funny, but
It is?
it's funny in the way that a kids show is funny.
Yeah.
It's very much a children's show.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I mean the rest of Star Trek is appropriate for kids, but this is a children's cartoon. So just
Made
because they cement the
specifically for
character,
them.
yeah, the
Yeah.
main character is a young person. One of the characters sounds like a very young girl, kind of, even though the character is like big and fuzzy. That one is very much a show for kids, but I watch it. My husband and I do Saturday morning cartoons. So and that's
fun.
like a good Saturday morning cartoon for us. But yeah, Below Decks has much more adult humor. I think it'd be fine for kids to watch, don't get me wrong, but okay, I'm remembering now a couple episodes that maybe were not as kid friendly. If you want to watch it with your kids, just preview it, make sure that you're comfortable with the content.
Oh boy. All righty.
But it's one of those things, like there's it's more about sight gags than it is about like content of the story. There's some stuff that's being implied, and if you have young kids, it's going to go straight over their heads and they're not going to notice it at all. So that's what I mean by just kind of watch it before you watch it with your kids and just make sure you're okay with it. So that's kind of how I've gotten into Star Trek, and how much I've had a good time sort of exploring a lot of the new episodes that have come out. When Picard was announced as a new series, I was like, yeah, I'm in, let's watch this. And I enjoyed season 1, but season 2, and we'll get into this a little bit later, season 2 definitely like had my attention, partially because I felt really lost for a little while, and then when I figured out what they were doing, I was in 1,000%. So that's me and my Picard journey.
Now that you brought it up, let's talk a little bit about Star Trek Picard Season 2. Let's start with the story itself, because I'm thinking that's what you're referring to, the story itself.
Yeah, so to me, well, first of all, I feel like there's quite a few stories happening. This is one of those shows that I really feel like you need to have some Star Wars or some Star Trek under your belt in order to get it. Like you need to,
Yes.
You don't have to have seen all of the Next Generation. You kind of need to understand a little bit about how decisions got made and what Picard was like as a leader. You know, there's lots of cameos and Easter eggs and things that are in there, but they're also telling stories that are much closer, very personal, very individual, alongside sort of this bigger, what's happening in the universe type of a story.
Right.
And that's why they had my full attention. Like I said, I liked the Next Generation because it went a little deeper into the psychology of exploration, and this one like took it 10 levels beyond in terms of really exploring the trauma and exploring what's happening in somebody's head and what it holds them back from.
Stacy, what did you think of the story itself?
Initially, it took me a couple episodes to kind of get into it. When they said this is going to be a second season, and then they said Q was coming back, and then you would have Whoopi Goldberg in his guy. So I was like, okay, it's going to be a great show, but it still took me a couple of episodes to get into it. And partially is, even though I like Picard season, I'm not as close to the characters there, except for Picard and maybe Seven. You know, when they first went back, yeah, I'm not sure how far we're going to go into it.
As far as you want to go into it.
I wasn't really I was like, okay, I'm trying to get into it. Because, I want it futuristic, and it's like, they're back here in this with all our problems. But I did like the fact that they talked about Picard's, and we talk about his mother and that relationship and that trauma that was traumatizing, and you know how he misremembered what had really truly happened to her, but that how that formed the kind of captain he was. And if you ever watched the Star Trek, the original series, and you see Picard, the Next Generation, on how different Kirk and Picard are in the way they handle things, but also in the relationships they had with people.
Right.
Like I said before, with Captain Kirk, you would get space herpes because it was just open season for him.
Yes, it was.
But Picard, he only had I don't even gonna say a handful, maybe two, people that he became attached to in any kind of deep personal, at least romantic way at that point. He was just, I guess, more cut off, it seems. Now, and then you see why, up to a point, why is he cut off in that kind of way? It's like he's more, it shows that he was always a caregiver, in my opinion, and that brought to the care later on from his mother to the whole galaxy or universe, whatever you want to say. But you see how that formed him, but also how deeply that, in some ways, in a detriment when it comes to his relationships later on.
Right.
But at the same time, we needed that because that's also why he became a great captain. But at the same time, it was trauma that caused that.
It's interesting you're mentioning that because it actually intertwines the whole thing. Like the whole,
yes.
Why he is the way he is actually what propels the whole external stories. The external story, which the external story is really just, it could have wrapped up in one whole episode. We actually we didn't delve into Picard himself. The whole thing about the Borg is coming and the Borg is trying to defeat this whatever else is coming. So the bookends, in other words, the external story is episode 1. And the last episode 10. Everything that kind of comes in between that is just it's like it's intertwined. And the only reason that we can make sense of all of that is that we have to know Picard himself. So we have to go back and look at his backstory, right? And so that's why we are, it's very interesting the way they kind of interwove all of this stuff together. I think I kind of agree with you, if I'm thinking and if I'm remembering myself correctly. I kind of agree with both of you that I was very much into it, but I was very much confused the first couple of episodes. So I was like, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
It also kind of, a side note, I watch reruns of this every night. They're like white noise for me, and they're like my downtime, whatever. And so they run on one of these other stations, other digital channels that you can get. And so, so they run kind of white noise. And there's this one episode near the beginning. It's in season 1. I think it's episode 3 or 4. We see his mother when they're with the Traveler, when we first meet the Traveler in that episode. I don't know if y'all know this one. And they go out very, very far into space. It's so far into space where thought and matter become like what we think we can envision. It actually comes to life. And so he actually sees his mom on the Enterprise or something like that, and his mom is older. I watched that, and so I was like, I thought that was his mother. Is that his grandma? After I kind of and then I realized, no, that was his mother. We just didn't know that Star Trek Picard season 2 was going to happen, and so we didn't get into a lot of other things. Other than that, a lot of other things that happened on the Enterprise or that happened in TNG, we now get an explanation, if you will, in this season 2. It's like season 1 was really external, but season 2 is really all about Picard. It's all about him. And we kind of now understand why he is the way he is. I agree with Staci in that Kirk and Picard are they're almost like opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, Kirk is like, Yes, let's explore strange new worlds. Very personal and up close. I mean, I don't think there's like not one alien. Exactly. And, and I was just like, and I'm thinking, this is not good. But you know
He's not
what?
sexually compatible
And
with.
actually, this is actually a funny part. I had to talk about this in Stardate, and so there's actually a little part in Stardate where the hero and the heroine they talk about, who's the whore of the series. And it's almost like every series has one. Have y'all seen that? Like every series has a character that is just kind of like fooling around. Oh. But yeah, Kirk is the one on his on TOS. He's the one.
Okay.
Picard, fact that he just kept himself walled off, and now we know why. It's very enlightening. But it also makes sense with actually what is going on now with him and Laris. Because I kept wondering. I was in the first season. I kept wondering, well, are they married? And then no, she was with. Oh, it's like she was there, but they're not married. What's going on there? And then it's like, why can't he kind of get over that? And you kind of see that. And so it really is all about Picard. I do want to talk about some of the other characters, some of the other main characters before we talk about Easter eggs, because I consider Q and Guinan Easter eggs. Maybe y'all don't. Do y'all? Or do we want to talk about them?
One of the first things I was thinking of when it comes to Data and Q and all that is how they bring those into them. Like, because Data is supposed to be an android, so he shouldn't age. And Q is this the thing, and they shouldn't age.
Yes.
And I liked how they kind of played that off with Q coming in young with the CGI. It says, "Oh, you've aged, Mon Capitan," and then he does his,
right,
snaps and he ages. I was like, I'm glad y'all did that.
Exactly. I was like, but he's a god, so they could show that he's aged. And and it's funny with Guinan because with Guinan and see, there's actually a time kind of issue with Guinan because
in the Next Generation, it actually was her. It was Whoopi's character playing Guinan back when they were like with they went back in time.
Yes, they went back in time
and
to
they
San Francisco.
But it was Whoopi playing it.
Exactly.
And it was with Mark Twain. So remember Mark Twain being it.
Yes. And that was a 2-part episode when they went back in time. So
that's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah.
It's so good. I was thinking to myself, okay, so why is he then meeting new Guinan like he's Guinan from 2024? Why is he meeting Guinan from 2024 like he's never met? I don't know. Like she's never met him, I should say. Like she's never met him because he knows who that is. She's like, who are you kind of thing, but she should know because she's been on Earth forever, and we know that she's been on Earth forever because we saw those episodes of TNG. But she also says it in this season. She also says, she's been there long enough where she's now bitter. And that's why she was packing up her her bar. By the way, y'all, the name of the bar and what did y'all think of that?
10 Forward.
Did we think that was a gimmick, or did we think that this is a cool way to kind of explain why we call 10 Forward 10 Forward? Yeah.
I think it's a good connection.
Say that again, Jen.
I liked the connection.
Oh, you liked it.
There was a connection there, and so I appreciated that. I think that it was also sort of meant to be that inside joke for the fans, because when Picard looks at where he is, because he sort of appears in this alleyway, and he looks up and he goes, and it says something like Forward Alley, and then he looks over and it's 10, and he kind of has a little smile. He's like, oh, I know where I am. So yeah, I thought I liked it.
Yeah.
But I love the cheesy stuff like that. Like the cheesier the better. 1000%.
What'd you think, Stacey? Did you say, oh, this is a gimmick? Oh no, or what?
No, was thinking when you do stuff and it brings you back into the old episodes, or you're doing that, nudge nudge wink wink, like look at they did. I
Yeah.
always think that's good in most cases. I mean, and I really enjoy it. It's like, okay, you give something for the old people who've been watching it for a while. Like, this is not
Right.
new.
Exactly. And it's also kind of like, for me with Easter eggs and stuff, I get giddy because I'm like, I'm a real fan. I know this stuff, kind of thing. And it just makes you feel good inside that you're like, I picked this out. It's kind of like when back in the day when we were watching Marvel movies. I shouldn't say back in the day because Stan Lee hasn't been gone that long. When you would go to the movies and you would pick out Stan Lee in a Marvel movie, it's one of those things, it's kind of, it just makes you feel like, oh wow, I'm a part of this cool club, okay, nerdy club, but whatever. I think it's cool.
The nerd club is the cool club. Let's be very clear here.
Yes.
Think about
Definitely.
who you're talking to. We're I love the fact that I pick up on the Easter eggs, and even like on the first watch, if I pick up an Easter egg on the first watch, I'm like, look at me being awesome over here.
Yeah, I love it too. I love picking that up too. But getting back to kind of the time thing, yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a weird time thing with Guinan that got to me. I don't know if y'all thought the same, or maybe I'm just thinking about it too much. I thought the thing with Q, this whole CGI thing with Q was just amazing. That was so cool. That was cool. It's like, let me catch up. And I'm like, well, and it totally makes sense with the character because, he's omnipotent. He can do that.
Oh, he thought he was omnipotent.
Well, right. Thought he was omnipotent. But yeah, with Guinan, it's a little weird. And then she does make a comment about, I know how humans are about aging, so I wanted to age a little bit along with y'all. And I'm thinking, Whoopi, you still don't look 25 years older. Let's be honest. Picard looks like he has gotten older, definitely.
Yeah.
I guess with Whoopi too, and with her with the Guinan character. She's supposed to be like, what, 500 years old now or something like that? Something insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other characters that we saw in this one. And also, now that we're talking, characters that are coming back kind of in certain ways, it's so funny with this because I've always felt like, and I don't know if y'all feel the same way, but I've always felt like at the end of Star Trek Nemesis, the movie, where Data is destroyed in that movie, for some reason, I remember him saying in an interview or something that Data, because Data doesn't age, we've got to kill off this character, kind of thing. And it's like, because I'm aging, kind of thing. He didn't say it like that. At the end of season 1, Data's character says, Picard, please let my conscience die. So we're thinking that we're not going to see Data again, right? Or anything like that. But we get here Brent Spiner playing a predecessor of Soong. What do we think about that? A predecessor of Soong who evidently at the end has a Project Con folder. Did y'all see that? I was like, oh my God.
Yes, I know, right?
I was just freaking out. And like Khan's name, is Khan Noonien Singh, and it's like, oh my God, we going crazy. I just about died. But what do we think about that, y'all? What do we think about seeing all these Soong characters? First of all, I'm just going to say Brent Spiner to play all these characters. Why didn't this man get an Emmy at some point?
Well, I mean,
or did he? I mean, I missed it.
I don't think he did, but I think, if you want to give something by playing multiple things, it'll be the person who played on what was that? What's that show? Blab. I just talked about that show, The Girl and the Clones. She should get an Emmy for that. But for him, he's done that before. Because remember in the original series, he's played his maker before and his brother.
Right.
So
he played his maker, he played his
played his
brother.
brother.
Remember in that episode where the holodeck was messed up because they had plugged data into
Mm.
and he played like 5 different characters on that show. It was like 5 different characters, including a female character, played it on that show because data was supposed to have replicated like throughout the system because they had this glitch. It's just amazing. I mean, first of all, it's amazing. But second of all, what are we thinking about? I guess this is more like a little bit of what are we thinking about Data's, well, not Data. What are we thinking about the Soon character in season 2? And say that again.
His daughter or his character in there?
His character and his daughter's character, because his daughter's character is actually also a return character from season 1, right? We see an iteration of her in season 1. So what do we think about that?
The family has strong genes because they all look alike.
Right. They're all the way back there in 2024.
They just go for it.
Yeah.
This is a good model. We're fine. No need to change it up.
Yeah.
I think that, in general, she's a really cool actor. But what did y'all think about her becoming a traveler at the end? Did y'all remember that?
I saw that and I remember like, okay, she's going to. Well, so I was glad she had something to see her more because really, I don't think they evolved her character a whole lot during this whole season. Because for a while there, I forgot about her. I really did.
Yeah.
But I think she could be really interesting just because of the fact of who she is and what her father, I guess in quotation marks, is. And I mean, I'm not sure how I want to see the Travelers, but I kind of want to at least see how that starts off if that becomes a thing. Overall, I mean, I wasn't as interested in their storyline. Once I started getting into the other one, I mean, we did need, I want to say Data's daddy. We did need to see his character, but I wasn't as interested in that storyline.
Right. What interests, I'm thinking for me, what interested me most about that storyline was the very end where we saw that Project Con folder.
Yes. And I was like, oh, yes, that's why they kept it in here. Yes.
Right. I was like, my gosh, Easter egg. Not just Easter egg, but Easter egg. And I wonder if this is going someplace.
Probably so. I mean, if you think about, like, if you watched the New Horizons, New Horizons, I don't know, they refer, I have to watch it again. If they refer to that, they talk about engineering and genetically engineered race of genetically engineered people and how that was outlawed. And that made me think, so did Khan and him starting that whole thing start that up? Because it does have a thing in the if you watch the New Horizons about that. Have you watched that?
Ooh,
I mean, I know you talked about it. Have you watched it?
I haven't. You're right. It's outlawed then.
Yeah. And I was like, so is this why it's been outlawed? Because that mean because of what he's going to do now? I mean, what he's going to do with Khan, but also what he did with his daughter. But once he goes even further with, we know the wrath of Khan is going to come.
Right.
Is that why that whole thing has been outlawed?
Yeah, see, I haven't watched that far into it, but in Star Trek Into Darkness, when the reboot of TOS, with Chris Pine and Zachary Pinto as Spock and all of them. So in Into Darkness, Khan is in that one. And they did mention that part of Khan's backstory, if you're not a TOS person, or if you didn't see Wrath Khan or whatever, they give you that whole backstory of the reason why Khan is there and Khan's people, and the fact that, yes, he was genetically engineered, and yes, he was part of that, and that is part of the reason why they outlawed it. And so to see this happen in season 2, it's like, are we going to see the beginning of this genetically because they've been kind of back and forth between movies and series and all this other kind of stuff. They've been talking about it. Even of course on DS9, Bashir is genetically engineered, and his dad went to jail for it. You always kind of see that like go between the series and different things, and so it's like, are we finally gonna get like that whole genetically engineered story? Is that going to end up being a story of its own? You know, you kind of wonder that. I don't know. What do y'all think?
I do want to hope they go into it, because that also explains some things for me about when they show stuff like the mental illness, stuff like that. Cause it's like, well, didn't they just get rid of that? And it's like, no, because they outlawed bioengineering and stuff like that. So people would still be born with issues, with
Right.
so that kind of explains to me whatever Dr. Sun's going to be doing to make bioengineering illegal. But I mean, that has wide ranging effects because of what he's done. I mean, they've stopped progress on a lot of things. Because you would have thought that the whole thing with mental illness would have been gone best if they could do, something about that. Or did they ever say how Jordan LaForge lost his sight? Was he born like that?
Yes, he was born like that, and they actually say that in the first episode, in the first Farpoint episode.
And you would have thought, hey, they'd have fixed that in the before he was even, but now you know why they don't do that.
Right, exactly, because technically, if we're looking at the timeline, Khan and all of them, they've had at least a couple of generations or whatever. I mean, it's been outlawed. The fact that Bashir is there, and the motley crew of folks that he had on those couple of episodes they were mentally messed up. They were there because it had already been outlawed. So upstanding people like Geordi LaForge's parents, who were both Starfleet officers, and I think both of them were captains, they would not have put their kids through any kind of genetic engineering. So that's why he's blind. And even Picard's mom, after that had happened, after they outlawed the genetic engineering, because that was supposed to have come. You're saying that they're saying that in Strange New Worlds now. Yeah, it had already been outlawed.
That's the prequel. So it had been outlawed long before.
The character they talked about,
the character they talked about, she's an adult, and so it's like, so it had been outlawed before then. So it had to been outlawed early. But
I think they said, I'm not gonna start doing
a timeline.
I'm not gonna start doing timelines, because I want to. I want to. I'm not gonna start doing timelines, but for some reason I'm thinking genetic engineering was after those the whole World War III thing that Q talks about in the very first Farpoint episode or whatever, where they do the trials or whatever. So that was supposed to happen in 22nd century. And I think at the end of the 22nd century, then it's supposed to be Khan and genetic engineering or whatever. It's supposed to be in that same century, which is supposed to be before the Enterprises. Because I think the Enterprises are in the 23rd century. Don't get me started with that. See, you want to see nerdy. Yeah.
All right. I am completely out of my depth on this one, I got to tell you. Completely out of my depth on this one.
Move on.
No, I want to go, but I kind of want to come at it from a different direction, just to say that there's folks maybe that have access to some of that genetic engineering and have it as an option for themselves or for their kids, and then other people might make a different choice, because ultimately Picard's parents, live on a vineyard, right? So they may not have been terribly interested in that type of thing. Now, I do think that genetic engineering is very different, though, than mental health. And I think that there was help available, but she wouldn't go. And that was the deal with his mom, because the dad mentions a couple times that about getting help for her, and this is better, we are here because this is better for you, and he's trying to move forward, but ultimately she is the one that is refusing care, which is very common in folks that have depression. So I think that's kind of where that difference is, that she could have gotten more help if she had agreed to it, but he wasn't gonna force it on her, right? That he gave her agency, which you can argue maybe that was the wrong choice, but ultimately, I mean, adults get to decide whether they have healthcare or not healthcare. So,
yeah, I agree. I think that was the whole point with Picard's mom, is that she did not want to get the help that she could have gotten. I think she had depression, but I also think that she was bipolar as well.
I could see that.
Because
Yeah, I
she
could see
had
that.
a few episodes where it was like she was like really happy, and she was playing the games and stuff with him and everything. And I think she had some bipolar issues. This actually, the whole genetic engineering and mental health and everything, it kind of brings me to some of the societal issues in season 2. We see so many societal issues in season 2, and one of those is focusing on mental health with the mother character, and the fact that I think, yes, was obvious she has depression, but I also think that she has some bipolar issues. But also there are a few other societal things that we see here, and part of the reason why we see some of these societal things is because of the story, because they end up going back to 2024, which is still in the future for us at this point. But because they go back to 2024, right before they go back, we see an alternate version of what could have happened if Picard had chose differently. And that alternate version is rife with xenophobia.
Mm-hmm.
They also mention the environment. Is They don't do it blatantly, but they do mention this is why there's this grid around the earth or whatever. You see this little bits of like a grid, and it's kind of going up in smoke a little bit, and it's because they patch the ozone layer instead of fix the ozone layer. And so
Right.
it brings up, okay, they're making a commentary about the environment and about climate change, and they're also making a commentary which was disturbing for me, but not the first time it has been done on Star Trek, this commentary about xenophobia.
Mm-hmm.
So what did y'all think about how they addressed that, considering that these are big issues for us right now? And these are just 2 of them. We're going to go through a lot more of them. But what did you think about just those 2 at first?
I think it was strange to see that there was so much for a world that we would recognize as having all this exploration, to see what happened when they were fearful of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to see how a character that we would have, we think that we know Picard, but Picard is ultimately, and the rest of us are too, right? We're the result of how we were raised in the world that we're raised in. So that he would have been a person that is full of hate because he was raised in a place that was full of hate, that was the expectation, that was the norm. I think it makes a really good comment on this idea that we have this opportunity to choose the people that we become based on what we surround ourselves with. And so ultimately he was surrounded by all this hatred, and therefore became a person that was full of hate. So, but when he was surrounded by, he had certainly trauma and tragedy in his past, but when he surrounded himself with and opened himself up to people that were different than him, he was somebody who was very open and accepting to people that were different than him. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a
Yeah. Staci, what did you think about issues that they brought? These 2 particular ones.
Well, when I first watched it, I thought about here currently in the world, black, white, brown. I mean, just all the different races, and how we're always. I'm not when I say we are always, but I mean just like everybody is, against this, against that, against this. But then, if you watch any other alien movie, and when they come down to attack us, we all get together as one, and we're all together in brotherhood, that kind of thing,
Right.
to defeat the enemy. To me, it's the same thing, as in, but they've created the enemy as any outside, even if they're not really an enemy, they're just different. Now the Federation is not, reaching out to hug each other, to reaching out across the galaxy, like, we are the galaxy. Stuff like, we're the world, we're the galaxy. It's, I'm putting, my foot on your neck because we're humans and we rule this shit. I mean, that was a startling change, but I could see how that could be twisted. I mean, all it takes really is fear of the other.
Yes.
And people will start to, we need to push this down. We need to do this. You know, we don't want them coming over here or, you know, showing us all this Vulcan crap. We don't need that, you know.
Right.
You know, it's just how easily that can turn. And I mean, you're watching that and like if you compare that to like, I think that was like one, I mean, I'm not sure how many years between Star Trek, the original series, is supposed to be Star Trek: The Next Generation. If they're kind of going by the same canon, when did that happen? Did that happen under Picard's watch? That became, you know, the I guess Earth Nazis at this point, or was that always a Federation? Did that change because of Picard's upbringing, and then that became it, or was it early? And maybe I missed that. But
they didn't really connect that that alternate timeline to the timeline that we know. They didn't really do that connection.
But I mean, I just
the kind of the way they set it up, it was like Picard kind of fueled this whole thing, but you don't really know. They didn't really specify. It's just they focused on him because it's his show. So
but I mean, I think it's just fear mongering, and you just, once you pick the target, people find it. If you make it fearful, people will turn like that. And I don't.
Yeah.
And there are people who will hopefully stand up for it, or stand up against it rather. From at least the last few years, you see how fast that can happen, of just being, it's a us versus them mentality.
Right.
And how, you know, and then if you would think that the better or the more advanced we've become, that we'd be less like that. But seeing that did not really give me warm fuzzies about the future.
Right.
Because, you know, but at the same time, it was like more realistic, I guess, than anything else, that just because we may advance in society, or, you know, if we don't do something, it will just be more advanced technology wise, but doesn't mean that on other issues we have advanced unless we work at it.
Right. It's like we've advanced in technology, but not advanced in moral certitude or whatever. I think for me, I kind of have a two-part kind of feeling. First off, I feel very much like both of you. It's like seeing this is really, it was almost too real. And, you know, because this is also on Paramount Plus, I'm going to make a quick plug, but The Good Fight is also on Paramount Plus, and I happen to be also watching The Good Fight kind of at the same time. And there's some seasons of that. There's the last couple of seasons that they've been doing is, well, actually the whole series, the political climate mirrors what is actually going on politically right now. To see that happen on The Good Fight and in real life, that kind of xenophobia stuff, and then to see it on, you know, one of my favorite shows and my favorite nerdy franchise, is very eye-opening and striking, and it's bothersome. It really bothers me. The other part, or the other way I see this, and all the other societal commentary that they do in this series, is Star Trek has never shied away from bringing what's going on in society into the story. They're like, it's quintessential science fiction. That's a lot of what science fiction does anyway. It's just, it gives, you know, you're looking at it and you're thinking aliens and, you know, whatever, but really the stories are very human. It's a very human concept, and a lot of times people have to view something as something totally different in order to get it, right? In order to understand, hey, this is a warning. This is not the way to go, you know, kind of thing. And Star Trek TNG, in my opinion, was amazing at it. To me, DS9 was all about religion and religious tolerance and war, and Voyager was a lot about the environment, but environment and, you know, about social relations as well. But TNG, to me, touched on a lot of these societal topics and just went at them head on. And this is one of the ones that, yes, it went at it head on. Also, another nerdy moment. So even though I haven't watched a lot of the original series, there is this one episode where Kirk and Uhura and there's I think Scotty, but a few of them from the Enterprise go get caught on some planet, and they end up going into this alternate reality where Kirk is a general. And immediately when I saw Picard as this general, people were amazingly violent. It kind of took me back to that TOS episode, and that episode was kind of like a very xenophobic episode, and actually they were doing a Hitler's like salute in that episode, just to kind of shed that light on this is not a good thing, right? This is what you're headed to, kind of thing. I get the whole canon of it, and I get the appreciation of it, but I also get the wow, I didn't really need to see this right now. I can kind of feel it. So everybody go vote. But anyway, these are just kind of two of the societal issues that we see. But then when we go to when they end up going back in time, because that's how they fix everything that's going on, they end up going back in time. We also see some other societal issues. Captain Rojas, is that his name? Anyway, when they end up, okay, yes, Chris. So yes, when they end up going back in time, yes, and they Captain end up Rojas, getting beamed down to Earth, Chris? Los Angeles, 2024. Chris. Yeah. Captain Rojas, who is from South America. I think his people are from South America. But anyway, Chile. Okay, good. Yeah, I was like, I know it's a South American country. Good, thank you. So they,
Chile.
He ends up somehow getting hurt. Oh, yes, I remember how he got hurt. He ended up when he materialized off of a fire escape or something, or something like that. Anyway, so he ended up getting hurt and ended up going to this clinic that was actually helping immigrants, and ICE raided the clinic. So you've also got societal issues here. When they go back to 2024, you've also got more in your face, actually even more in your face than looking at it from alternate universe. We've got it right here, right now: immigration, ICE raids. So what do we think about kind of how they're doing this? We've got ICE raids, we've got mental health issues going on. What do we think about all the societal issues that we have coming up, all these other issues that we have coming up, especially the one about immigration, because they did several episodes about that?
Well, I kind of thought it's the emphasis of what it's going to be like in that alternate reality, really.
Right.
And I was just thinking to me, that's what it was. It was just, this is how you can get to that. It's just, instead of people coming into this country being the aliens coming in, it's going to be real, different aliens, and we're just switching it up. Certain people in power, you need to have somebody for them to fear, and then we hate together.
That is an interesting way to look at it. Jen, what did you think?
So I was thinking that if we look at ICE and that fear that we have of folks who are different, and you can definitely see the connection between that and what that alternate reality became, right? There's the what is her name? Renee.
Yes.
Character, the idea is that they have to save her exploration, right? We have to make sure that she's on that flight, so that when they go and explore and they find I think they call it a bacteria or something, but they find something out in space that is we'll call it a comfortable small item that they can find, but it gives them respect for what might be living out in space. And that whole idea that if she wasn't there, that we wouldn't have had that type of an introduction, and maybe that's why the that it becomes a whole, like the whole planet becomes more xenophobic.
Right.
So when we see how ICE is treating a person who is, well, he's literally an alien. He's literally like not from this world, but
Right.
but when we see that behavior and we see that sort of reflected back on us about what is allowed, even now when we're in theory in sort of this a little bit more innocent sort of a time. And I agree with you. I think that's something that Star Trek has always done a really good job of, and something that sci-fi in general is able to do is sort of create these situations. And because you put them in the place of aliens as opposed to in the place of modern day people, then it removes you just a little bit, but you can comment on it in a way that makes it a little bit more approachable, and you can ignore it if you want to. You can sort of keep your head in thinking, oh, this is just pretend, this is just something that happens in pretend world, versus actually putting that mirror up in front of yourself and in front of the society that we live in, and recognizing that this is a commentary on how we currently live and the way that we currently treat people.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly.
But
And Staci, yeah.
well, I was gonna say that fear and stuff, even when it's not something you need to fear, because we saw that in the who was it, that police officer that got Picard and
Right,
and got him?
Wells, the agent that
Yeah, the
and he
agent.
had this experience when he was a boy. Yeah.
Boy, and it caused a lot of fear and anxiety, fear in him of the aliens. And I was like, oh. and,
Right.
and how, but it really wasn't something. I mean, they were just coming there to make observations, put a tag on some on some people for later. But they were just there to see. They weren't there for anything nefarious because they were Vulcans. But that fear that he had as a child, and they were trying to do this to my head, and it's like, well, they're trying to just see you won't remember it, and they totally botched that up. Whoever that was needs to be fired.
Yeah.
But that fear stayed with him for the rest of his life, that he was about, the next, if he was a little bit more just fearful and hateful, he was like, vivisection. Let's cut them up because they're not cute.
Right.
He was to me, it was like, it was just enough. He's just enough to believe and wanted to prove that he whatever. At least it wasn't so fearful enough that he was able to believe Picard when he said they were not trying to do anything evil. And you were right. You were not a crazy kid. You were right. There was somebody here. They're Vulcans and they weren't whatever. So I mean, but it was how close he was to the edge of he could have been. I don't care what the reason you came here for. You're an alien. Let's cut them open, as we always see with, ET and all that. We're going to study you. But he was still at least open-minded enough to let them go.
Yeah. Right.
And destroy his career in the process too.
Right, exactly. That's what I was
good
saying.
point. No, true.
So he was on that edge, and he at least at least he stayed on the, he didn't go off the edge there.
Because that could have gone very wrong. That could have gone very wrong. Yes. But yeah, so kind of pulling it all full circle, Star Trek, like a lot of science fiction stuff, as we said, it does show us kind of what could happen if we take certain paths. It shows more of the human condition than you think that it shows, or that it sees on the outside. And of course, as this is Nerdy Romantics podcast, that's why there's always a good romance somewhere in there in sci-fi that's not very far away. And that's why these two things go together, even though you don't think that they go together. What do we think about the relationships of people in general, first of all? Who did we like? Let's do it like this. Who did we like seeing together? Who did we not like, and who did we think was just disturbing, or what do we think about the different relationships going on here? This is just kind of a side.
Well, I didn't find anything disturbing.
Nothing disturbing.
I love romance, so I just want everybody to be happy with their person, and the whoever they're with. So I would say that, so the Seven and Raffi thing, they weren't together at the beginning, right? I mean, Seven is literally just sort of out there fighting on her own and very much a loner and all that kind of thing. And there's a whole commentary there about, similar in a different way than Picard does, but she has to accept who she is and kind of has to understand that she is not damaged goods. She is loved because of who she is, not in spite of what she's been through. And so I thought that was a great thing. And when we met Raffi first, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think with the first time we meet Raffi in the first season, she is also living alone in like a trailer in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, in a trailer. Yeah. Exactly.
And drunk. She's very drunk all the time. There's a lot of, she clearly has a lot of issues, so that she has come around for full circle to be in a position where she feels parental about this. Oh God, what's his name? Arun? No, Arun.
No, I don't know why I want to say Endor, but that's not right.
It's closer to Endor. Okay. You guys know who I'm talking about. But she feels parental about him, and she's back in uniform. Like she has re-entered society, right? And
Elnor. It's Elnor.
Elnor, thank you. So she has re-entered society from a place where she was alone and in her own way on, bottom of the barrel, right? So I think that is a beautiful relationship where they have found each other and found in each other people that respect themselves, that respect the journey that person has been on, and find that love. So I thought that was a great love story. And then we've got the Picard and
Laris.
And thank you. Oh my God. I clearly should have written down everybody's name. I am the worst.
I should have too.
It's just worst with names. I can never remember titles. This is a whole problem for me. All right. A little bit of insight into Jen and her issues. But we have Laris and Picard feeling that he can't dive in, right? That he can't be that person. Can we just give it up for an older romance that right? Picard is, I don't know what exactly age he is, but there's a comment by Guinan, I think, that he's pushing 100. And what he realizes is that it's not too late for him to find a person that he can be with. And I think that's a beautiful thing, not only for Picard being 100, but for anyone to just kind of be like, you don't need to be alone for the rest of your life. Find somebody that brings you joy and be joyful together, right?
Right, exactly. I love that about them, and I love that it's with Laris, I think her husband died or something, and also there's also the commentary of Romulans, we don't feel love like that. We can bring love into our heart again. So it's kind of like it's also like saying it's okay to love again, after if you've lost someone, it's okay to have that moment. The Picard's side, I like that he's opened his heart, or he's trying to open his heart to this person. But I also like on Laris's side that she gives kind of that explanation, and it's more so for the watcher than necessarily for her, because she's already gotten to that point where she can love again, right? So she's already gotten to that point, but it's more for the watcher saying it's okay to love again, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say about Raffi and Seven. Well, kind of in the beginning, maybe in the second episode. I think it was the first. It wasn't the first episode. Yeah, it was the first episode. The first episode is like they're definitely not together, but it's like Raffi likes Seven, maybe more than Seven likes Raffi. It's kind of like she has a crush. Rafi has a crush kind of going on. Yes, they're not together because Seven is very much that Fenris Ranger. I want to be by myself. I'm better alone kind of thing. She's got that going on very much in the very beginning. And kind of like you're saying with Elnor, Rafi has already, she did that in season 1, and now she's in the nurturing kind of mode. She's in that mode where I see a future, together kind of thing. But my feeling is I'm just glad she didn't end up with Chakotay. I'm sorry. That was the one thing I hated about Voyager, is that in the, kind of in the end, she was supposed to be with Chakotay, and I did not like that pairing at all. Everybody that's a Trekkie fan knows why, especially if you're out there with the Trekkie flash fiction kind of stuff. Everybody's been trying to get Janeway and Chakotay together for years. So that's kind of the thing. And they did almost get together. Remember, there was this one episode where they did almost get together, when they were stranded on this planet because they both had got bitten by this bug or whatever on this planet, and they had this virus. Voyager had to leave them there on that planet. And so it kind of evolved from being, captain and first officer to, being Catherine and whatever Chakotay's first name is. I can't remember. But anyway, it's just kind of like, we thought that they were going to get together, but they did not get together. If you're in any Reddit groups or anything like that, or out there, you've seen it, you know. Or if you just do a Pinterest search, you'll see some nice photos, right? Or some nice images out there.
So here's our progression, right? We've got Kirk, which will sleep with everybody. Anyone on any planet, and then we've got Picard, who is completely closed up in terms of his love and his body. And then we've got we've got Janeway, and we've got and DS9, which really didn't go into a whole lot of relationship type situations.
They didn't have a lot of relationship type situations because, and I think part of it was they were very focused on that whole religious thing. But the whole Odo pining for Kira for like ever.
Yeah,
and then after he finally gets her, he ends up going back to his people. And I'm like, you dumped her. You realize you just did that, right?
Right, exactly. But then we go to what is it? Strange New Worlds. New Worlds, like, what is that? First 15 minutes, we know that what's his name has got a
Archer. Yeah,
like, we went straight back into, I don't know if it's the yellow shirt. I think it's a yellow shirt thing.
Yeah, it might be a yellow shirt thing. It might be a yellow shirt thing because the red shirt thing with the older with the pre-TNG Star Treks. The red shirt is bad. The yellow shirt, yeah.
Yellow shirt, man. That means that you can sleep with whoever you want to sleep with.
Right, exactly. That yellow shirt does it.
Because Archer does all right. Archer does okay in that series. Well, that's a whole other episode again. But Archer's doing just fine. He's taking care of him. So anyway, sorry, I got us distracted.
No, it's okay.
I'm always here to talk about romance, though. So.
I know you are, Jen. But yes. So I love the way we see different facets of different relationships here. I will say the one disturbing thing, and correct me if I'm wrong if you don't think this is a love relationship, is Dr. Jurati and the Borg Queen. I'm sorry. I think there was a little bit of obsessive love thing going on there. Maybe
absolutely.
So. Yeah.
Well,
it was kind of bordering on unhealthy a little bit.
Oh, well, first of all, it's clearly unhealthy. This is a Borg Queen.
Right.
Right. But I don't know. That to me was more about like creating a partnership. It never felt romantic to me.
No, it felt like some sort of symbiotic relationship. I mean, it was not to me a romantic relationship. It was simply companionship. It's like they both needed something, and they
Needed
talk about
somebody. Maybe a
how
codependence.
yeah, that's why I was thinking codependency. I was like,
Yeah.
it's walking, talking codependency there because they did need each other. The Borg Queen is a Borg Queen. I mean, it's like that whole colony, mentality. While the other, and I can never say her name. What is her name?
Jardy.
But,
Girardi.
and of
Jardy.
course, my
Yeah.
my clock goes off. So y'all talk amongst yourselves as I mute myself.
Yeah, and Girardi. But the other relationship that we kind of see, kind of a relationship that we kind of see happen is Captain Rojas and the doctor that he meets in 2024, and how that relationship comes about. And I really like that. To me, that kind of was, if it, in my opinion, that was the healthiest relationship on the show. Is that just me, or is that the healthiest relationship on the show?
I liked them together. I did. I totally liked them together.
Yeah, and I think it's the most vanilla, I guess,
Yeah.
out of it. It's just stuff that we see a lot more of, single mom and a guy, I mean, it's a Hallmark movie, so
Yes.
so it's kind of something that we're used to
Especially when the
seeing.
boy does the cake, when he's like, I want cake. I was like, this is so Hallmark movie when they're
Movies.
there
I
on
mean,
the
that is
ship.
for that one there. And I mean, I didn't. The other was Seven. I really didn't notice it. I mean, it was just something like, oh, they are together, and that kind of thing. I didn't really notice the romance part of most of it at all, for whatever reason. The only thing I did notice, cause y'all were talking about Captain Picard and Laris, and I was like, the only thing I noticed is like, she's close to being age appropriate for him.
Right.
And I'm saying, I'm just saying, in theory for TV stuff, because technically speaking,
Yes.
he is still 20 years older than her. She is at least in her 60s versus, hey, Captain Picard and the 21-year-old that he's seeing now that he found love
Right.
with someone new, So I was glad of that when I saw that. I was like,
But I will say for the very few relationships that Picard had, they were always age appropriate
yeah, they
versus
were. They
like
were close to his
Riker
age.
always
Yeah.
wants some young nubile woman.
Yeah.
And then keeping Deanna Troy on.
Deanna Troy's mother, I love that
Oh
when they were
my
together.
gosh. Yes. So fun. But yeah, so I just wanted to throw out the little romance part in there since we were talking characters. But before we go or whatever, I want to talk a little bit about Easter eggs. There's so many Easter eggs in here from different series, and we talked a lot about them here. So we won't get into all of them. We won't really talk all of them, but tell me, what was your favorite Easter eggs? Jen, what about you? Something that stuck out and you were like giddy because you were a Trekkie, you were a fan.
Okay. Controversial opinion, but I really enjoy the Q episodes. A lot of people don't like them. A lot of people don't.
I love them.
They were, because they're very different. But I always really enjoyed the Q episodes, and so I was just really glad that Q was there. Which isn't an Easter egg. I mean, he's kind of a big character in the show, but I really enjoyed that. Okay, come back to me because there was something on the tip of my tongue, and now I can't think of what it was.
Okay, I'll come back. Staci, what about you? What were your favorite Easter eggs?
I mean, I like the end when he brought out the file that said con. And I was like, oh, yes. But I thought, and I meant to stop it and to rewind and turn on the closed captioning to see if they actually said that. But they actually, I think when they're in the alternate world, that alternate, reality, and Seven was walking with her husband talking about something. It was like, and we need so and so from Commando. I think he said Commando Cisco, and I was like, is it Cisco? You know?
Yes,
And
yes,
I
General
was
Cisco.
General,
Yes,
yeah, they said, I was like, what? And that
yes,
was one of those
they
things
did.
like, are they gonna bring him in? I'm gonna I'm gonna
I
see him.
know. I was,
But
but at that point too, I was like, please don't bring him in. I was like, oh, this is gonna be cool if they bring him in. But then at the same time, I was like, please don't bring him in at this point because they were
he's
at
just
like the
evil.
height of the xenophobia at that point, and I'm thinking a black general. I don't know. It just didn't ring right with me. But
Mhm.
yes, I felt it too. Jen, do you remember the one you were thinking?
No, that's okay.
So maybe some of these will jog your memory.
All
So
right, yeah.
some of them that I thought yay were, well, not necessarily yay, but I was kind of giddy. So when they were talking when Picard was in the alternate universe, excuse me. When he was in the alternate universe, they are walking through his
The trophy room. Sorry.
chateau, right? The trophy room. So the first thing you see is this picture of the Stargazer, which, by the way, the ship that they were on in the first and last episode was called the Stargazer. Everybody remembers the Stargazer was Picard's first command. That was his first time he was captain, was on the Stargazer. But you also see this picture of the Stargazer. You know what? It didn't dawn on me at the time, but something, made me think he had on TNG, he had a picture of the Stargazer, but it wasn't a picture. He had a model of it. When you first come in his ready room, there's a model of the Stargazer there. Of course, everybody, when they're thinking ready room, they're thinking about that big fish that he had in the but which is cool. But he also had like a model of the Stargazer in his ready room, and I was like, that's where I got that from. But it's that. But the other thing that had me kind of giddy in a bad way is that in this alternate universe, because humans are, because they're xenophobic and they're like humans, are it, they're killing off all these other people. And so he had these skulls of people that he had killed off. And some of the skulls were, one was Gul Dukat's skull, one was General Martok's skull, and one was Sarek's skull. And everybody knows Sarek is Spock's dad. And actually on TNG there were a couple of episodes with Sarek, and Picard had a mind meld with Sarek, and he actually got closer to Sarek through that mind meld than Spock ever got with his dad, because he never had a mind meld with his dad. I was like, the juxtaposition of hearing them say, one of these skulls is Sarek's skull. I'm like, the Picard that we know would never do this. The other thing is, as far as being a Trekkie and as far as being giddy, we hear the General Cisco, and also Martok was DS9, which, is kind of, with DS9 is kind of, when you think about TNG, DS9 is kind of like that black hole in the middle. There could be a connection with Voyager, because of Seven, and Seven being a Borg, and Picard also being a Borg. When he was Locutus, we have that connection there. But you really don't necessarily get that connection with the DS9 stuff. They have to kind of bring that in, because if you think about it, with DS9, when Cisco, in the very beginning, when Cisco got put on the station, he got put on the station because his wife died because of Wolf 359 and all that stuff, and he does not like Picard at all. So there's not a lot of interaction there. The fact that Martok was one of the skulls there, that was, I think that was kind of a way, and Gul Dukat being one of the skulls, of course, that was a kind of a way to bring DS9 in, that doesn't seem weird. And then the whole General Cisco thing. I'm not sure if we talked about this while we were recording, but just in case we didn't, We talked about 10 Forward offline. Maybe we talked about it when we were recording. If we did, I'll probably edit this out. When we flash back to 2024, we see Guinan is at this bar in Los Angeles, and the bar is named 10. And 10 is actually on Forward Avenue. And so that is kind of a connection between TNG's bar that Guinan is over 10 Forward. I was really giddy about that too.
That's what it was.
No, 10 Forward. Oh,
it was 10 Forward.
And
it made me so giddy when I saw that. Because it wasn't sort of immediately obvious, because there was like a plaque on one side that was about like Forward Avenue or Forward. I thought it was alley, like an alleyway. And then the number 10 above the door.
Yeah, and actually they have like this plaque on it, this plaque kind of under that says "Welcome to the Forward District" or something. So that was why it was called Forward Avenue or whatever, or Forward Alley or whatever, and it was forward because it was in the Forward District. And I was like, that's interesting that it's in the Forward District, and all of these, all of this trash is all over the place, and homeless people are just lining the street there. It's just amazing, and it's a historic Forward District. But and then the other thing about that, going into the bar, remember she tells her bartender that she wants Earl Grey tea piping hot. Yep. I was like, yeah. I'm like, we are in the right place now. But then he wanted something stronger. And it's funny because on just about every series, they ask for Sorry and Brandy every time they want to get toe up drunk. It's always Sorry and Brandy. Oh, gosh. Those are just a few of the Easter eggs. I mean, this series, or this season, the series, in general, is loaded with Easter eggs. But this season was loaded with Easter eggs as well, and I just had so much fun as a Trekkie watching it, and my mind was open, and as a watcher and a lover of story, also a person who's very in touch with what's going on at the moment, and is an educated voter. It just hit me on all those different levels. And I think that's why I'm giving this season 5 stars. So let's talk about our rating here for the series. For season 2 of Star Trek Picard. We give everything a Goodreads rating. And it's been a while since we've done a book read, but I know Goodreads is for books, but we do it for everything here. Our Goodreads ratings go like this. Goodreads rates a 1 star as you didn't like it. 2 stars, it was okay. 3 stars, you did like it. 4 stars, you really liked it. And 5 stars, it was amazing. And so that's why I'm giving it 5 stars. I thought that this season was done so well, and it was amazing. And I love the whole story, the mystery component, which we didn't really talk about with the Borg Queen kind of thing, but we'll leave that for those who maybe, even though we warned about spoilers, they still kept it on with us. But so I won't reveal that, but I just love the whole thing. It gave me levels, so I'm gonna give it 5 stars. Staci, what about you? What's your star rating for this one?
My star rating will probably 4 stars. I really liked it, enjoyed it. The only thing is, like, I wasn't like I wanted like a dump, a binge watch of it kind of a thing. I was like, okay, I can wait to see the next episode. So that's why,
okay.
That's why I would say a 4 versus, I wanted to see the next episode, but it wasn't as, oh my gosh, no, you didn't lay it like this. Now, I only felt that at the very end of the
okay. Yeah.
But I would say a 4.
Okay. Jen, what about you? What's your star rating?
All right, I'm going to go 4.5. Because on the one hand, I loved, like I said before, my favorite episodes of Star Trek are the ones where they really go into the psychology and explore the brain more so than the space, more than the universe. And so those are my favorite episodes. So because this entire series was essentially that, spoke to me, and I loved it on so many levels. I would agree with Staci that they could have done a little bit better with the endings and making you feel like, oh no, I want to watch the next episode immediately. And I also felt like the last episode, like once we sort of get them back into the future, right? So they're back on the that spaceship, and they're being confronted with the Borg Queen. I felt like all of that was kind of slow, and also sort of wasn't satisfying ultimately. I'm glad that they connected. I'm glad that they, were like, oh hey, look, it's our friend, right? I'm glad that they did that part of it, and so I understood that part. But in terms of we're all gonna like band together and save the sector from this, anomaly that's happening, I felt like that was just a little too tidy. That's why it gets the half star.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. And, even though I've given it 5 stars, I will kind of agree with you there on the last episode being a little slow. I did think it was a little slow, and I thought, is it me, or have they wrapped up the story already?
Yeah.
And then
they wrapped up all the good stuff.
Yeah. And so then when we go back to the ship, it's more like, oh yeah, I forgot this is what we were doing in the first place.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
the framing device was very much a device and wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah, it really wasn't, because I know there was a whole thing like they had to be afraid of the Borg Queen, and then Q had to take them off the ship to go back and like figure out why Geordi was the Borg Queen. Like I understood that part of it, but yeah, they just kind of that didn't feel as satisfying as the rest of it did. But
yeah, it was like this is an explanation for some of the stuff you saw in episodes like 3 and 4 and whatever. This is why this happened, kind of thing, and this is why we played this song, and this is why this happened. So it was kind of like, oh yeah, that happened. So it was a wrap up, but yeah, I agree. It was kind of a slow wrap up. I feel like if they had done like an extension off of episode 9, but I know that they're not going to do that because the last season was 10 episodes, and I actually looked this up. So the next season is going to be 10 episodes as well, because they've already finished filming it. So it's just kind of a round number, I think. But as far as story goes, they probably could have done another 30 minutes and cut half of that last episode. We would have still had the full circle moment. I will say though, when I had the full circle moment, this is why I gave it the 5 stars, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that is what happened. Because I love little puzzles and mess. I love puzzles and stuff. And so just kind of seeing how all of that fit together, that actually, made me a little bit giddy, because it was like a little puzzle kind of being solved. So
exactly. Yeah.
Totally
get it.
That was my point. I just want to say I am so happy I found 2 other Trekkies who will talk Star Trek with me. I love that y'all are here. Thank you for joining me on this.
It was great being on.
Very happy to be here. So happy to. Thank you so much for the invitation. I have my husband and I did watch the show together, but it's so much fun to talk to you guys about this stuff. And you guys always have like completely different insights than I do, and it's awesome.
I love it. Just for the rest of you out there, all my audience, if y'all are also Star Trek lovers, we are going to talk Star Trek Discovery next. And while we absolutely love that show, I hope everybody loves that show as much as I do. So stay tuned with us for that episode. Thanks so much for listening. So that's all for this episode. We've got a new website at nerdyromanticspodcast.com. But don't fear, All of our episodes and their show notes are on our new website. While you're there, please consider donating to our podcast with the donate button at the top right-hand corner or the Buy Me a Coffee button on the show notes for each episode. Your donations go straight to keeping this podcast on the air and keeping all of our episodes out there for you to listen to whenever you want to. If you want to get our show notes in your inbox, please consider signing up for our Nerdy Romantics newsletter. The sign-up form is at the bottom of each page on our new website. Thank you for listening.